Hey everyone, this is Rushlock, and as always, for the latest news, tips, and tricks for EVE Online, hit the subscribe button down below. And if you're able to, if this video is of interest to you and you enjoyed it, please consider hitting the like button and leaving comments. I know you hear that on every YouTube channel, but it does extremely help with visibility of content and is very much appreciated. So today we're going to look at a Reddit post from Darkshines titled "A Mildly Erotic Open and Honest Letter to CCP from an Alliance Leader." So this is a pretty lengthy post. It's definitely taken some time for it to be written, and I want to go through it in a way that isn't rushed and also not wasting a lot of time for you guys. So remember to listen to these videos in like 1.25 or 1.5 speed. Down at the bottom right, there should be a video option for you. If you're on mobile, it might be upper right. But anyway, the case is hit the cogwheel, change playback speed, and we'll get through this faster. I'm going to try to keep this sub 10 minutes. We're not going to get through it all in one video. I'll probably make this a multi-part series, so be aware of that. Dear CCP, New Eden needs your help. EVE has always been a game with near limitless potential. It's had the biggest fights, the most newsworthy events, and some of the most intricate mechanics and stories in gaming history. However, all of these have only been made possible because EVE had a solid foundation upon which we, the players, could build on. Absolutely true. The potential has always been there. A lot of this has always had those feelings of like, man, if EVE could just get this one thing right or 10 things right, it would just explode in popularity. Probably isn't true. It's just the way we look at it from perspective of something we enjoy that isn't reaching the levels that we think that it could. Also, something that's of interest to me, keep in mind, I haven't spoken to Darkshines. I don't know Darkshines. I can't speak for them. I can only give my feedback on my perceived intention behind statements, all right? One thing I want to point out is the New Eden needs your help. It's probably more meant to like attention grabbing, like, you know, get you focused in on the article, but it also comes off and plays as if like CCP has just been sitting around for 3 years, spinning wheels and doing nothing, which externally, that's how it seems, right? Like we haven't seen new content, we have no new tools to help this foundation for players to build contents, or at least very little compared to the amount of time that's gone by with nothing quote unquote new. So a lot of that I can definitely agree with, or at least understand the position behind. The PvE was repetitive, but it was reliable. The industry was complex enough to be challenging and robust enough to take effort, yet still be achievable by your average players. So I should have said this before we got started. There are going to be a lot of things in here I agree with, and there's also going to be a lot of things in here I disagree with. And this is going to be one of those disagrees. Your average player, you know what they do with industry? They open it, click around for a few seconds. Nope. Click back out. Average players were never doing industry. I have absolutely no idea why Darkshines would think this. And that's kind of the part of the point of these videos, is to kind of try and take these points and try to put myself into the perspective of the person writing it and trying to understand where they came to that conclusion from. Maybe from leading an alliance that's nullsec based, your average members' willingness to dive deeper into systems is probably much higher than the overall player base. Typically, and again, I can't speak for Darkshines, but typically, when you have somebody speaking from the nullsec alliance leader perspective, well, not even leader, just anywhere in a nullsec block, their perception is often warped into thinking that they're the majority of players, and they're not. Most players are in highsec, running missions, mining ore, mostly playing a single player or small group type of PvE game. And so when I see things like average players, I start wondering immediately what this person's assessment is of that quote unquote average player and what shapes and molds their bias, you know, toward that concept. Players logged in, made a little ISK, and then spent it on blowing other people up. Or they might log in, mine some resources, and provide the tools to be sold to the PvPers. The cycle of EVE was mostly uninterrupted, whether it be war or patches, would throw it for a bit, but it would recover. So, I don't know if their intention is to say that these things are not happening now, because of, you know, 3 years of stagnation. Players logged in, that seems to me like a swipe at the PCU, right? Like, well, players aren't logging in anymore. Made a little ISK, which is absolutely nonsense. The faucets were beyond crazy overtuned for a long time. And that's entirely CCP's fault. That's not a player problem. That's a CCP problem. And then spent it on blowing other people up. No, they stockpiled. Or they bought Plex, right? That was like probably the most healthy thing for it to go toward, is people just paying for their game time. But Also, a lot of times it just sat in Plex vaults and just sat. Let's see. The introduction of skill injectors and mining oracles accelerated this process, bringing it to a new level of production and destruction. That's true. When people think of the Rourke era, they will tell you of how Goonswarm became the game's superpower, or that Care Bears were making too much ISK. Suddenly, super capitals and titans were a possibility for players who never would have been able to afford one or before. Early on, for injectors and like the proliferation of resources, that was probably true. Like, it was fresh. It was like, oh man, you know, I couldn't fly a Titan because when would I ever get those kinds of resources? Now, resources are everywhere. They're in excess. They're in overabundance. Now, you get a Titan, and you get a Titan, you get 5 Titans, you get 18 Titans. It'll be great because we're going to undock them and blow them all up, right? No. They blew up more than they were blowing up before, but they weren't blowing up at an equal scaling pace. So if they were making 1 Titan per time unit, you know, I don't know the time construction for a Titan from start to finish, and it doesn't matter. The point is, if it takes a certain amount of time to build 1 Titan, and a certain amount of time to blow it up, and the time to blow it up is shorter than the time it took to make it, you're going to be fine, right? But now if you're making 18 Titans in a time unit, and you're only blowing up 10 of them, you've got 8 extra Titans that are just going into a stockpile. It doesn't mean you stop making Titans. It means you keep making them, and that stockpile just can grow and grow and grow and grow. Maybe early on, there was a game state where they were blowing up still faster than they were being produced, or at least maybe there was more of a parity between it for an equal balance. But there was far more time, measured in years, where the stockpile number was greatly outpacing the production and the destruction cycles. So this came off as a little like rose-tinted glasses, or narrative spinning, or pretending something was happening that wasn't. I don't know. Again, I can't claim to no intention, but that seems like it would be an inaccurate perception. What people usually fail to remember was the fights and explosions generated by these Rourkes. Tackling 24 mining capitals was a common occurrence and led to fights that most of us can only dream of now. Yes, Titan proliferation was an issue. Where's the was part? And yes, Rourkes needed to be nerfed. No, they needed to not be buffed in the first place. But it is important to remember how many fights they generated. Now, this is true. You did see much bigger scale engagements and losses happening in terms of perceived value, because you had a game state in the past where things like this weren't possible, and now suddenly they were. And so for your, this will seem disingenuous, but if you have your Call of Duty cliche type of gamer, they typically don't think beyond kill mail to kill mail, right? Man, look at that Z kill tick. Oh man, look at that battle report. Oh man, that was fantastic. They can't think beyond that, and it's fine, because it isn't their job or responsibility to do so, right? They think in terms of the adrenaline boost or the dopamine hit of, you know, we're getting on this big fleet of capitals we're about to wreck, and it's gonna be so awesome, and that's just the end of it. So when we get into this paragraph here talking about the fights that they generated, it is true. They did generate more quote-unquote content, more things for players to do, but I don't know why they would feel like Titan proliferation was an issue and suddenly magically stopped being an issue. There have been no engagements in the last 5 years where the majority of Titans in existence were deleted. That hasn't happened. CCP was able to deal with the Rourke issue by walking back the long overdue changes to the Rourke to take it away from the position of a must-have or perceived you're flying this or you're flying trash kind of situation that kept the resources floods opening nonstop for years and years and years. But CCP couldn't do anything about these because they can't make players, you know, undock and actually fly them and lose them. And players have no reason to. It's not the player's fault. They have no incentive to do so, because we've transitioned from a game state where years and years and years ago people would undock for the sake of blowing things up. That was their quote unquote worth it. Nowadays it's, well, why are we undocking this fleet if we're not taking an objective that's quote unquote worth it? Because we need something that's going to outproduce our losses, right? We need to come out ahead. We're not going to go out and fight things just for the sake of fighting anymore. And it's kind of like the bog that CCP is stuck in. I mentioned this on a Discord post the other day where CCP is like, hey, we need you to blow up your stuff. And players are like, we need a reason to do it. And CCP is like, well, we can't give that to you until after you blow up your stuff. And CCP players are like, well, or EVE players will be like, we'll log out and we'll go play some Final Fantasy 14. Like, That's the whole conversation. Now, we've gotten a bit long in the video here. We're going to wrap it up at this part. This is only part 1 of the series. We're going to go more into this thread. I won't have to do as much intro work on the second and possibly likely third or fourth part in the series. So yeah, that should be good. Hopefully you're watching this at the sped up feature that we talked about early in the video. Again, if you can, hit the like button and leave a comment if you have some early thoughts on the first part of the post that we've gone over. And until next time, goodbye forever.